My mum was a ballet dancer and my dad was a drug dealer. And one of my earliest memories is trying to hide my sister in the bathroom with the door locked as he's beating my mum. When she left, that was my turn. There was no escape then. He would wait till I'd put my seatbelt on in the front of the car before then going at me because I couldn't defend myself. I was in and out of sleeping on sofas, sleeping on building sites. Being resilient isn't being the fittest, the fastest, the strongest all the time. It's about being in control. 3 days later, I'm delivering resilience and performance psychology to the Paralympic rowing team. I'm the head of psychotherapy for a clinic on Harley Street. Providing people with safe spaces to be able to communicate is such a superpower.
Not your fault as a soldier on the ground. You were doing what you were told and you were doing it well.
The most important thing you can do when you're thinking of leaving is finding out who you are outside of the uniform whilst you're still in the uniform. And I often ask myself this question, would I change it? Probably not.
This week on the podcast then, I'm with former soldier turned psychotherapist, if I can get that all out in one go, all right? We're going to have a great laugh. Bring it on, mate. How are you?
Hello, mate. How you doing? Thanks for having me.
No, thanks for coming. Listen, the way I run these is basically, I'm going to delve into your history a little bit. It is a debrief. I'm going to debrief your life with you, all right? And we're going to chat about things, and like I say, anything you really want to talk about, make sure you dump it in, all right? Because we want to hear it, okay? So Let's start off with all my guests, little James.
Yeah, right? Little James. I was actually born in Hammersmith in London in 1988. My mum was a ballet dancer and my dad was a drug dealer. And a fairly serious
that
one.
On its own, right? Ballet dancer, drug dealer. I mean, in my experience, ballet dancers are sort of like in society a level up here.
Yeah.
And drug dealers are normally sort of like...
Yeah. Well, my mum had escaped a really, really abusive childhood. I don't think she pulls any punches about that. She escaped a really abusive childhood. She ran away at 16.
Okay.
See you later. She ran away to London. She was an incredibly talented dancer. She was picked up by Pineapple Studios.
Wow, that's incredible. That is the, for those that don't know, that's the grail of studios in London.
Yeah. And this drug dealer had approached her, but he was like high end. He wasn't selling baggies on a street corner.
Right, okay.
He was using a chocolates company to bring it in from Belgium, and then was using the drugs that he brought in with the chocolates to distribute to like top end hotels.
Wow, that's
serious.
That's like it's like the Godfather's involved with this one, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, when I went to prison, when he went to prison when I was 13, it was all over. It was on national papers.
Really? So you and how old were you? 13.
13.
So you're seeing this, aren't you?
Oh yeah. And
your mates at school are going, "That's your old man."
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
How did that do you?
I mean, it didn't help that the papers were brought into school, and who's giving these kids their papers to bring into school?
Yeah.
Kids aren't collecting national and local newspapers to bring into school. Their parents are giving them that.
Of course they are, yeah.
So that didn't help. I was a teenager. He'd gone to prison. My mum had left living with him. They divorced. She went.
So who did you stay with?
Well, my sister went and stayed with my mum.
Okay.
And I split my time between the two, which was then pandemonium.
I mean, how does a drug dealer have time to bring a kid up?
Well, he doesn't.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That's where I'm going with this. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. So it was like really violent. So
really, did he knock you about?
Oh yeah, big time. So
fucking hell.
I mean, I put it in my book that I think that one of my earliest memories is trying to hide my sister in the bathroom with the door locked as he's beating my mum. Like, since she's like screaming, like beating her senseless. And then when she left, that was my turn. There was no escape then. So
I had a similar thing. You know it's coming and all, don't you? That's the thing. You know it's coming, don't you?
Yeah. There was like a sweet spot with his coke and alcohol whereby he would just pass out. So if you could avoid him,
ride it out
for long enough, he would just pass out somewhere, and like to the point where you could like hold his eyelids open and ping his eyelids back. Just like gone.
Well, no doubt you did. Yeah.
Hiding in that and coming out and just pulling his eyelids back. Yeah, like gone. And so that was, if you could get
what an awful thing. I mean, when you looked at him like that as a kid, what was going through your mind?
Oh, you're terrified of him, right? Like that's just straight up.
And when you pull the eyelid and he's not in his sweet spot, you're gonna get you're gonna get
your
life, aren't you?
Yeah. And it was stuff like he would wait till like I'd put my seatbelt on in the front of the car before then going at me. Because I couldn't defend myself because I'd have this seatbelt on, I couldn't get out of his way.
It's just the fact that the child's saying to defend himself, do you know what I mean, and holding your fists up. That's not a picture that I like to see, do you know what I mean? That's horrendous.
Yeah, and I think I was like 8. So yeah, that was just
But
it.
would there not know? I mean, was he leaving any sign on you? Do you know what I mean?
When he went to prison, one of my rugby coaches turned to me and said, "We knew something was going on, but we didn't want to say anything." And how much do we still see that today?
Loads and loads and loads, and that's why I speak out about it, because it might be just a bruise to the school, but some of this stuff needs investigating. Doesn't it?
Look at the celebrities, quote unquote, who have been in newspapers recently. People said, "Oh, we knew this was going on, but we didn't want to say anything.
Yeah.
We knew this person was doing that. We knew this person was doing that, but we didn't want to say anything." And that's still a thing. Like there's, Amnesty International say it is better to light a candle than curse the darkness. And there's lots of quotes, lots of Marcus Aurelius. The only thing for evil to prosper is for good men to do nothing.
Yeah, no, you're right. And I feel it took me ages to open up about some of the stuff that had been on in my life, and I think, I crossed this line where I actually realised I had an obligation to say. And if what you're saying is going to help other people be identified as being either in trouble or being a perpetrator,
right? Yeah.
Then you have to say it, don't you?
Right. Yeah. If 1 out of 10 men are truly awful, terrible men who do awful things for women and awful things for children, and those 9 men do nothing, then they might as well not be there.
Yeah, it almost makes you a terrible man, doesn't it?
It does.
Do you know what I mean? It makes you, especially if you know what's going on.
Right. Yeah. And you choose to not do anything. Like, we are not what we say we are.
So
we are what we do.
All these places you went as a kid, rugby club, school, and nobody really sort of like picked up on it. Or if they did, they were going, "Yeah, it'll be all right until he sticks his hand up."
Pretty much, I think. Yeah.
And there was no ever hint of you going into children's homes or anything like that.
So, I definitely remember being at secondary school and writing on a back of a piece of homework like "help," and putting in there, and it being ignored.
Really?
Yeah.
I mean, that's just.
Yeah.
Level.
But I remember when going into like social services and you have to do the whole like where did he touch you type thing, all that stuff. I remember that being like a really awful point in life. And it's really dark, but it's really interesting about how the brain then has to learn to manage and cope with that level of cortisol, that constant chronic cortisol that goes on, and what happens to brain development and how we then challenges.
Yeah, because what a lot of people don't realise is a lot of this stuff is actually chemical reactions in your body. So stress, for instance, releases stuff that then damages your arteries and all that sort of stuff. So there is a genuine health impact on this stuff.
We call it psychoneuroimmunoendocrinology, which is basically, I know, right? Mind and body. Yeah.
Mind and body.
Mind and body. Oh my God,
body.
Yeah. When someone said that to me, I was like, say that all again. So yeah, mind and body. So yeah, absolutely. So we can identify a stress response is a neurobiological process whereby we effectively release cortisol, which is our stress hormone, and that triggers our central nervous system into it. Now that's it in extremely like reduction. It gets wild. I have no idea. Still, 99% of the things that I read and learn, I don't get it. But effectively, stress perception has a strong effect on how we develop as adults, because as children, the brain goes through a process of neurogenesis and neuroplasticity. So we learn and the brain grows and challenges and changes. So the moment that we exit the womb, we begin to absorb the world around us because that becomes the blueprint for survival. We look at our primary and secondary caregivers, normally mums and normally dads, and we say, well, what do they do to survive? Because that's what I need to do to survive. Yeah. How often is it that you turn around and say, oh my God, I'm turning into my mum or I'm turning into my dad? And you go, your brain is actually designed to do that, because as cavemen 2.5 million years ago,
you had to copy. Well, that's what animals do, didn't you? Right. The baby lion learns to attack things, and then the baby lion grows up. Yeah,
perfect. Yeah, that's it. So we are still very much that caveman orientated mentality, and we still have the same drives as a caveman, and there's still instincts of the caveman. And so what we're trying to do is we're looking at this blueprint. Hence why children who come from incredibly abusive backgrounds are far more likely to become abusive themselves. Yeah. Like, you come from violent backgrounds, you're far more likely to become violent as an adult. Women who had like incredibly distant fathers are more likely to find themselves attracted or trying to date emotionally distant men. Those avoidant attachment styles, and they're becoming an anxious attachment style. They're drawn to each other, and that's what creates an incredibly destructive relationship. And we see the same with men. There are plenty of soldiers who date terrible women who come from terrible childhood backgrounds. Yeah. There's a reason for that. Like, that isn't too much of an anomaly. It doesn't just happen. That's right. We all do it. We're all known for doing it. Like, we all know young soldiers going and dating terrible and getting themselves into terrible relationships, destructive relationships. And you think, why are you doing it? Because that's what they believe love is. Because that's their example of love. That's their blueprint.
That's what they've had. And
that's embedded in a part of the brain known as the hippocampus, which is our emotional memory bank, which sits directly adjacent to our amygdala, which is like our emotional generator. It's a fear generator. So every single time that we are exposed to a situation or stress stimuli, we're constantly checking this memory bank for, well, what do we know? What have we got in our back pocket?
Yeah.
Which which is amazing.
So you broke this mould, all right? You broke the mould, obviously, because you didn't turn into a drug dealer for a start, do you know what I mean? So you've broken the mould. At what point in your life did you realise, I'm going to go in the army? What triggered, what stimulated you to go, I'll tell you what, I'm going to have a go at the army?
Like most people from an incredibly low socioeconomic demographic, I was very vulnerable.
Yeah.
And I had nothing going on. I was in and out of sleeping on sofas, sleeping on building sites, homelessness.
Yeah, so basically wherever you could get yourself an head down, you'd get an head down, and that would be it.
Yeah. Like, get me to join the army. And
did you get much trouble? Did you get any trouble yourself? Were you sort of like
trouble?
Me, I mean, I had a junior criminal record, all that sort of stuff, and it all emanated from what I'd seen. But did you get in trouble with the old Bill?
Yeah, naughty boy stuff. Yeah. There were times where I'd go missing for like several days.
They come looking for you.
Yeah, come looking for you. So like known locally to the police, scrapping, stuff like that, outside of Unwins, getting in fights. Remember old Unwins? Outside old Unwins, like scrapping and getting in.
Penny for a guy in a tear-up.
Yeah. Buy me some beer off. I'm not old enough.
Ten Richmond, come out with sausages.
That's it. So, and that kind of stuff. Now, I wrote a paper about this, which is that, because I was always really interested about why do we always recruit men, but some women, but mainly men from low socioeconomic demographics. Why do poor kids? Are poor kids actually more resilient? And I don't think that they are. I don't think that poor kids, kids who come from rough childhoods, are more resilient. I think they're more vulnerable because they're lacking their basic needs, and therefore the more vulnerable kids are actually easier to radicalise. That's why so many fantastic soldiers come from incredibly poor backgrounds, and they absolutely adore their regiment.
They cling to it. Yeah.
They love it. It's their identity.
Well, it does become your family, doesn't it? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It certainly did for me.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? I think looking back on it now, I also felt safe once I'd gone through the gates of the camp.
Correct.
Because it was like, you can't get me in here. And I had a particular sexual offender who was trying to groom me all the time. And I thought, you can't get me in here. This is the only place on the planet you can't come. You're not even allowed in here.
Yeah, right.
Do you know what I mean? So once I went through those gates at Lichfield, it was like, this is incredible.
Yeah, that's actually a really fantastic point. That actually, that it becomes a safe haven is literally aligned with barbed wire. And there's a man with a gun stood on there. So the people who have terrorised you as a child literally can't get you here. You can be whoever you need to be in these walls. They can't get you. Well, that's a really interesting perspective I hadn't considered in my writings. But yeah, I know exactly that. I completely agree. Like, I am free to be myself in here.
I could say things to people with the knowing that nothing was going to come back at me in here at all. Do you know what I mean? So you went through the gate at Depot. Where did you go?
Purbright.
Okay, that's marching and screaming, all that sort of stuff up there. Marchy, screamy Depot.
Marchy, screamy. Yeah, lots of marchy, screamy. And I loved it. Like, I mean, I was, as you'd imagine.
Were you a fit lad?
Yeah.
Obviously, you play rugby, no? You were a fit lad.
Fit lad, physically robust, and this is what I wanted. I didn't have much to go back to, so it was all or nothing. Like,
you can see a light at the end of the tunnel, and it's a light which has you doing cool stuff for the rest of your life, perhaps.
Yeah, like win or die. I'm not going home. I don't have any. I don't have that. It's not an option.
Yeah.
So and I loved it. I really loved it. Do you ever dream about going back to Phase 1 training just as a recruit?
I would love to. I visit Harrogate now. I've visited Purbright recently. I've been down to Lympston, all those sorts of places. I look at them lads and I think, this is the time of your life, son. You know what I mean? This is like, everything is there for you now, isn't it? Do you know what I mean? Because we go from, we do Phase 1, Phase 2, and then you go into a thing called P Troop, which is the preparatory troop for P companies. You do Phys 2, maybe 3 times a day. Yeah. That's it. Yeah. That's like your job is to turn up and get fast. And we were turn up and get fast. I like that.
and we had a block called Gujarat, and they named it the Gujarat Palace. And it was no one else. no one else was there. So it was just us as like young gunners, young private soldiers, just in this block. And you'd go out, and the PTRs would meet you and take you and thrash you, and then see you later. Go to Scoff. See you later. Like, so it was just pandemonium. It was the best days of my life. Part of me was gutted when I passed P Company, because then you go get your single man room in Merville Barracks with everyone else and welcome and It was like your own. It was like Lost Boys.
You go downtown at that stage as well, can't you? See, wonderful world of integrating with civilians.
You just be there and a fire extinguisher would go through a wall and everyone would be like, and it was so good. But those days when you think, I can't wait to pass. It's that classic. It was from the American Office, isn't it? Which is, I wish there was a way of knowing that you were in the good old days whilst you were in the good old days.
Yeah, so you're wishing the best part of your life away, aren't you? Do you know what I mean?
I can't wait to pass. Like, As soon as you pass, you've actually got to start being serious about your life. Whilst here, it's training's amazing.
It is. No, I always say that. What a place to be. Do you know what I mean? Everybody's in the same boat. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So hardship isn't hardship when everyone's in the same boat as well.
Right,
Is it?
yeah.
You know, if I'm the only one getting beasted, and it's hardship. If everyone's getting beasted, it's a laugh, isn't it?
Yeah. No, it is, and it is that ability to just laugh about it.
Yeah.
That's like the great thing, we talk about like developing emotional resilience, and there's lots of great examples of how the army does that. And I don't know that's always deliberately done. One of the key aspects of success that I do, and I work with a lot of very high performing athletes now, and I work with a lot of very high performers, full stop. One of the key things we talk about is identity.
Yeah.
Like, rather than setting an outcome goal with SMART principles attached to it, because the SMART principles aren't always realistic to people who have to live life. It's okay if you're in like a very like sanitized environment like the military where everything is provided for you. But like a SMART principle, something specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, time-bound, isn't necessarily applicable to the real world. Like, you get a broken leg, your car breaks down, whatever it is, you're not going to achieve that goal. So we talk about identity, and the army actually does this extremely well because it changes your identity almost immediately by shaving your head, which is very dehumanizing. It takes your civilian clothes off you, puts you in a uniform, tells you how to walk, how to talk, how to eat. Everything, like every single aspect, every single nuance of your behavior changes to fit this outcome of I'm going to be a soldier. You're not actually a particularly good soldier when you leave phase 1 training.
No.
What has actually changed is your identity and how you perceive yourself, which is then what you project to the rest of the world. So SMART principles are, but actually what the army does extremely well is it challenges your identity, and then it gives you a purpose more important than yourself, which is your regiment.
Yeah,
and
your regiment, and obviously operations and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
So you went to Melville Barracks when you finished. What was the time there? What were you doing? What was your sort of like tours and stuff like that?
So I was there 2006 to 2016, and I was part of APJI, and I was in a fire support team to the 3 Para Battle Group, which basically meant that it was a beast, but it was brilliant. Yeah. So I served on Herrick.
Busy Herrick?
Yeah. I worked with OMLT, so it was mentoring of Afghan locals.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, which was it was challenging for sure, and a really tragic end to our tour as well, which was
Can you tell us about it?
Deeply upsetting, really. It was the death of so we worked with the Irish Guards, and it was the death of their OC and signaller. So Major Matt Collins and Lance Sergeant Mark Bergen, 2 days from the end of the tour, which was really silly.
What was it, roadside or?
Yeah, the whole thing was built towards the opening of this checkpoint, and the Irish Guards have been sort of based running this operation out of the FOB where we were, and they were great, you'd say, and we integrated with them, and they ran this op, and they used lots of the soldiers that we've been training in for it, and I'm getting myself upset here, and and they went over a roadside bomb in the night, the night before they're due to open the checkpoint. So the night before they're due to open.
Yeah, and that just puts the whole cat amongst the pigeons, doesn't it?
What was the point? What was the point of the whole thing? Yeah. Like, we look back at it now, what was the point? Yeah. What was the point? And I think I was at what was the point? Like when we did the repatriation of them, and the conversations with them would have been like passing, like he was an OC and his signaller would have been passing and chatting, just minimal. Yeah. But it was a symbol of just how the fruitlessness of that endeavour in Afghanistan and what it really was. And we look back at it now and you go, what did we achieve? And there's this psychological abnormality now, which we identify as moral injury, which is where an individual can witness something that goes against their perspective of morality so much that it actually creates psychological distress. And there's a huge case for moral injury for the soldiers who basically watched the collapse of Afghanistan in, 13 days to the Taliban.
There must be so many people, like you say, who witnessed the sort of thing that you've witnessed there and think to yourself, hang on a minute, why did I even do that? Yeah. I get you look after your team and regiment first and all that sort of stuff, but actually, in the bigger scheme of things, that's an absolute calamity, isn't it? Yeah. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. You're just giving it back to the people who took it off. Yeah, yeah. And that's just, it's a really hard one. Yeah, yeah. And so people who then saw that then go, that goes against everything that I stood for. Like, there were people, who did, guys from the regiment who did like Herrick 4, Herrick 8, Herrick 13, deployed on like... these were punchy tours as well, weren't they? They weren't just sort of like, let's go over there, and they were proper fist and boot fighting, some of them. Yeah. And so then those guys who did those tours and then saw that, and the guys as well who served in Iraq on top of that, the sergeant majors who had served in Iraq, the invasion of Iraq, and had done Afghanistan, and they're now witnessing those two countries are still in absolute turmoil. Yeah. And so, they've lost. They've had, physical loss. They've had mental loss. They've had, personal loss.
Yeah.
Like every kind of loss that you've had, they've had.
Yeah. And so then how do you then help that person manage their well-being with that? How do you help that person with their mental health? Like, how do you even begin? Someone has like spent their life serving an army, and then it's not because of tactical failures, but because of political failures that all of that 20 years.
I think that's the thing that hits me to us. It's not your fault as a soldier on the ground. You were doing what you were told, and you were doing it well.
Yeah.
Politically, it's just a shambles, isn't it?
Shambles,
An absolute shambles across the board from top to bottom.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. But that is exactly it. And that was what's so awful about it for a lot of people. Is that futility of war. They say, don't they, the first casualty of war is innocence. And now we're having these guys who served all these wars, who gave up their innocence, who gave up so much of their
Well, they're the best years of your life as well, aren't they? I mean, you're in your 20s. That's the time when you're sort of like it's a great time of your life, isn't it?
But then here's the thing, and I often ask myself this question: would I change it? Probably not.
No, because you would have had the same thing about you, the same drive, which would set you in the first place.
Right.
So, yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
That's an interesting point. I've never looked at it like that before, but that's interesting. That actually, I wouldn't have changed what I did either.
Yeah, even the mistakes, whatever.
Yeah.
Whatever. So then in 2016, so I had an unsuccessful attempt on selection. So I went on for Hereford.
Okay.
I was on the one in the heat with the guys.
Was that one or two?
Yeah. And I was a heat casualty myself.
My friend Matt was the training officer for that. Matt H. I won't say his name on here, but he knows who he is. he was, and he spoke to me not long after that happened. A horrendous selection that one. Yeah.
It was at the same time with the Lee Rigby incident. I remember that.
It was, that's right.
Yeah, because we were all like brought in for a brief and told that this thing had happened. Obviously, we had no idea what was going on, and they said just don't drive around wearing anything military and that type of stuff.
Because they got him with a Help for Heroes top on, didn't they?
Got him for a Help for Heroes top on,
yeah.
And yeah, so then I had an unsuccessful attempt on selection.
How far did you get? Just being nosy, really. Sorry about that.
I ND'd on the first day. No.
Failed me BFT.
Yeah. Which was really bizarre. We had on the briefing course. I had people who didn't get to the end of the CFT. Why are you there? I didn't understand.
Do you know what it is with some of these people? They get it on their documents that they attended SF selection.
Is that what it goes on like SJAR?
I attended SF selection. All right, yeah, but it's on there. Anyway, I digress.
It was on test week, so I think it was the Tuesday of test week.
Yeah.
So I was on there. So yeah, I had Elam Valley.
Yeah.
No, there was one before Elam Valley.
Okay.
So that one, we didn't get to the Valley. So yeah, there. And it was it's the place where I passed out. I saw you've got a map of Brecon, and I was like, oh, that's where I fainted, just on that little re-entrant there. So it was so hot. And I was trying to take time out of my marches because I was fine for time. I didn't have a problem with time to try and hit some of those streams, but because it had been sort of 4 or 5 days of it being really hot, it was just a dry line of rocks. But by the time you got there, then so I just thought, I'll just grizz it and like that's just naive to grizz it. And what was really naive, what was emotionally really naive, was that whole mindset of going to smash it. Like I hadn't had any red cards. I could have taken a red card for the day. I could have just gone whatever.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't matter. Like I've got Elam Valley and endurance. Like I'll be fine. Like I know that I'm fit enough. Like I'm just at that point where I have pushed myself too far.
Yeah.
But that's what's really interesting, because I personally think it's really interesting because it shows that lack of emotional maturity and actually a lack of resilience, because that's very much childhood trauma projection. That's very much I need to fight, and it's not having the sense
to step back when you should step back, or to rein it in a bit.
Yeah, I think it's Aristotle who says that the hardest thing is to know how hard to push and when to push it. Like stop. Like stop. It's fine. It's fine. Like being resilient isn't being the fittest, the fastest, the strongest all the time. It's about being in control.
Yeah, and taking the game all the way in some respects.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So anyway, we won't dwell on that. You came off. Yeah. When you came off of selection, what was your plan then? Because I know a lot of guys base their decisions as far as selection and passing it, and then after that they haven't really thought about what they're going to do. Like, do you know what I mean? So
the idea was go back.
Okay.
That's all I wanted to do, go back. Like, all I wanted, like that was it. That was all I cared about. But I was like really ill. Like heat stroke's like actually like horrible, isn't it? Like particularly.
Yeah,
like,
your body just rejects, turning your blood into treacle, and so you know how well you do it.
Yeah. So I had to have 6 months off, and in that 6 month period, my relationship with my then wife, we're really really good friends now, but my daughter's mum like broke down, and just everything just kind of fell apart really in my personal life, which is again a reflection of like childhood stuff, and it was a reflection of the fact that I was devastated.
Yeah, you took that home with you, obviously.
Yeah. Like I was like, everyone was like, Jim, you'll be great. Jim, you'll be great. Just because I was so fit.
Yeah.
But it doesn't really mean anything on the hills if you're going to like thrash yourself in 36-degree heat and be face down in a re-entrant with a thermometer getting shoved up your bum. Like that doesn't mean anything.
I want to see that picture.
I've got it on my phone if you want. I'll show you later. So like, you know, and so you had the delusions of grandeur that, oh, I'm going to go and get Sandy Berry, I'm going to be cool, and like it never comes to fruition, and that's just the biggest knock to your ego. You know, it's almost there's a term for it.
And most guys from sort of like airborne backgrounds in particular have got egos like small planets, haven't they? They're huge. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah. No. But that is it. You know, Epicurus says that a man with an ego is like a city with no walls. And it's true. Like you're so actually vulnerable. Like you take everything so personally because you think
you just charge everything.
Yeah. You think so the idea of like failure was not something that was necessarily in my vocabulary. I hadn't considered that as a thing, and I did fail. Like you can dress it up as much as you were caught out by the weather.
No, that's very honest of you as well, because a lot of guys would not have the honesty to say what you're saying. Do you know, they say, "Oh, it was impossible." They build other excuses into the argument. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But you're being very candid and honest about that, so I appreciate that.
But that's ego and that's vulnerability. Like a city with no walls. Like just be like, I failed, and people, oh, you're caught out by the weather. I was caught out by my ego. Yeah, because I had to like run to in between each checkpoint. Like if you finish a march, and I remember one of the instructors saying to me, I think I finished, and I was like, I had like an hour and a bit in the bag, and he went, why? Like there's like it doesn't matter. Yeah. Why are you fastening yourself to finish?
I mean, the ironic thing here is that I'm looking at now is if you'd have had the attitude you've got now, then you probably wouldn't have been in this boat. You probably wouldn't have badged that. You know what I mean?
Fine. I still do the fizz. I just
Yeah, your fizz probably are still fit enough.
Yeah,
you are fit now, aren't you?
Yeah. I still do some sports and stuff, and still do like the charity stuff and run around and put a Bergen on and do some half marathons and stuff. A little ultra marathons a little bit out of my league. I just don't have that in me. I think that's a different type of bloke who can push out those ultra marathons. I was
talking about Brian Wood who did that marathon to Sabres.
That's monster.
That's next level.
Yeah, was it 5 marathons?
I don't know what it is. It's where it is as well. And the whole deal. Sahara, and if the camels catch you, you're out of it. Like, do you know what I mean?
Yeah, he's a monster of a man. Yeah, what a fizz legend. Yeah. I didn't have the emotional maturity. I should have slowed myself down, but that isn't the mindset that I had. I thought it was smash. So I took a bit of time out, and I was really ill. My relationship breakdown, and then cometh the hour, cometh the man. And Lee Soper comes to my room, and Lee Soper is this 6'6" guy. He was the provost sergeant at the time. He was the army forward coach. He'd taken sabbaticals from work to play like professional level of rugby. The guy's, I adore him. It's like one of those where you do what he wants, or you do what he wants with a black eye. Either way, like he's right. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And he came to my room and he said, Colchester Rugby Club are looking for a strength and conditioning coach. Would you be interested? And I said, listen, you know, I'm in trouble and my relationship's falling apart and this is falling apart and I don't know what's going on with this. I don't really have like the emotional capacity. I don't really have, I can't be, There was a brief exchange, and then I remembered that I did want to go and be a strength conditioning coach for him, and he was 100% right, and I'm sorry I ever said no. And he dragged me to Colchester Rugby Club, and I became their strength conditioning coach, and I just fell in love with that coaching and mentoring. Like, I loved that. So at first it was like pre-para style fizz. I was a PTI, so pre-para style fizz like circuits, but it just became so much more than that. These guys who were like fantastic young rugby players saying to me, this is going on at home, or this is going on with the missus, or this is going on, and like I'm in no space to like offer them genuine like good life advice. Like I'm a mess, I'm a squaddy who drinks and fights and can't hold down positive relationships. Don't ask me. But it had these like really like close bonds and this really like positive relationships with these guys, and I realised just how much of a positive effect you could have on someone's life by providing them with the space to communicate how it is that they feel. Like providing people with safe spaces to be able to communicate is such a superpower, like, and it's a wonderful thing.
So you've gone in with an approach then, basically, not sort of like training as a squad. You're individually training people. You're going, right, you've got almost like a P file on every one of them. And you're going,
exactly
right, you need that, you need that. But together you're building something that they can operate together, aren't you?
Yeah, and so they played in National League Rugby. And so I was strength and conditioning coach in a National League Rugby team. And it gave me such purpose and drive, and I fell in love with it, and it really helped with work. And sort of 2016 approached, and the RAF had turned to 16 Air Assault Brigade and said, now that sort of Afghanistan's done and you want to return to conventional operations and power operations and all that great stuff, you want to do more parachuting, but we don't actually have the instructors, so it's not going to happen. And the brigade commander, who was a very charismatic guy at the time, he said, well, what I'm going to do then is why don't I pick 8 guys from the brigade of a mixture of all the different sort of units and subunits, and then you'll train them to be parachuting instructors. And I got asked, would I be interested in going from 7 and being the APJI down there? There was me, there was 4 guys from Reg, an engineer, RLC, and 2 on 6. And I was like, oh my God, yeah, 100%.
That's quite an alley job, isn't it?
Oh
really?
my, it was so good. It was so good.
Yeah.
And it just exposed me to a completely different world of working and life. Why? Because the RF were like, why would we parade you? Like, just turn up to work. That's weird. So is that what you do in the army? You just stand outside and someone reads your name out. And we're like really embarrassed about it. Like, yeah, that's exactly what we do. It's like, yeah, exactly that. Why do you do that? What time's PT parade? Why would we parade you for PT? You just go and do your own
What,
fizz.
you mean you can't put your trainers on and go for a run?
Yeah. Didn't know what to do. Like, we all got so excited.
Please, someone stand me still.
Yeah, exactly.
I need to put my arms on my side.
It was so funny because I was one of the guys who was on the course with me. He's in the Red Devils now. He's an unbelievable bloke, and he was an MFC, so we'd worked together at Kingy. And he said, I said to him, turned to him about halfway through our course, and I went, Kingy. He was like, yeah. I said, are we the knobheads? What do you mean? It's 16 air assault. We think everyone else is a knobheads, but I think we're the knobheads. Like, we're the knobheads, mate. I think you're right, actually. Yeah. As the instructors coming in going, lads, really sorry, but the aircraft that we need for the next lesson isn't going to be available for a couple of hours. So why don't we all just go for a cappuccino? This one's on us. We'll get you a brew. Let's all meet up in Costa in like half an hour. All right.
Yeah.
We're like waiting for someone to like flip a table and punch someone, but like, so, oh no, maybe we're the bad guys. Yeah. Maybe like you don't have to scream and shout at people to like get a higher performance out of them, which then kind of led me into this idea that some of the work that I'd done with Colchester Rugby Club was then applicable to the young soldiers, like the young paras who were coming in. Some of these guys, never been on board an aircraft before. And then the high pressure of them jumping out. And it's well worth noting as well that they get less jumps. You think, but that's less pressure. That's way more pressure. There's no Hollywood jumping single stick from a C-130 just for banter anymore for your first jump. Like, they are straight into
sim sticks and
if you mess this up, you're out. Because they don't have the aircraft capability.
So, is that reflected in the ground training? I mean, obviously, you must have to do a little bit more ground training to accommodate that.
Yeah, but I mean, if you remember from your jump course, like, ground training felt intense.
It did, yeah. It was always in a sling or running up a ramp or
people
falling
shouting
off.
Yeah, exactly. People just shouting.
Just screaming at you. The whole, are they still in those wooden blocks down the bottom of Figure?
They've got rid of them now, finally, yeah.
Just
finally, what even
there
is
was
this?
A tear up in there every night, do you know what I mean?
Yeah, and like, there was, like, they had, like... It's like Phil Campion was here in 1994, written on the wall.
Section.
Yeah, next to
the dog section.
Yeah,
and then someone window.
Yeah, it was terrible. I remember saying to like the young lads, and like one of the young lads was like, "Oh, like the accommodation could be better." And I said, "You're absolutely right. It could be. I'm not invalidating what you're saying, but I'm just saying it could be a lot worse as well." Like, there were porter cabins that hadn't been updated since the 70s.
Yeah,
like, I would not want to go around those rooms with a black light. Like, the amount of DNA that was just everywhere in those rooms.
Be honking.
Absolutely
honking, yeah.
Nightmare. So yeah, and what I realised was that using some of the key psychological skills that I use with the athletes, like emotional regulation, anxiety control, breathing techniques, using those with the young soldiers was actually dramatically improving their performance. Yeah, because... like, it just explains, rather than shouting. And don't get me wrong, there is a time for that. Of course, there is. It's military training. There's a time when you're on the wrong risers and all that type of great pantomime.
Sort yourself out.
Yeah, exactly that. But there's actually a really good time and a place for just sitting them down and explaining calmly. When you deliver a parabrief, you remember, like, to the parabrief, and this will happen, and this will happen, and this will happen, and this will happen. What you actually do, if you can deliver that in such a way that you're inspiring an imagination, to getting them to think through their jump in detail. I've got a story of a guy who he had a terrible exit. And he came down and he was in absolute shit state, twists and kit everywhere, and so they said he needs to go again. That was the worst, terrible exit. Like, we've got the space, the aircraft is going to land because the aircraft has a ruggedized landing platform, this thing called a Skyvan. He gets back on, and we get on with the aircraft with him, And like the guy's just in shit state. Like you can see.
And the Sky van was a hard exit as well.
Yeah,
wasn't it?
yeah.
I used to smack my head on the thing.
Exactly.
Sent you the wrong way from the start.
Yeah, exactly that. Yeah, and you could just see he was in like a really terrible way. And it came to like the like prepare for action, and he just sits there. And we undo his belt for him, leg through the leg strap, beneath the leg strap retaining loop, LLRP off, opposite seat, all that type of good stuff. And basically went through all the drills for him, fitting equipment. His equipment and the guy was just in shit state. Fit the equipment for him, opened up the back door. Like red light, red on, and he just goes, no. And then he's like, oh my, what are we going to do? Green light. And you can see this guy desperately trying to get out of the plane, but his feet are saying, this ain't happening.
Yeah, you ain't doing that, son.
And his upper body is desperate to get out, and he gets sat back down. And you watch that and you see that and you think, the problem with that's actually terrible instruction. You're trying to be a good bloke because you're trying to help him. You're just going, I'll just do it for you.
Yeah.
But by doing it for him, you're not allowing him to distract his mind from his fear. You're not bringing him back into the present moment. Instead, you're just doing it for him. So then when it comes to you've now got to go and do it, go and perform, he hasn't got it in him.
I suppose that goes a little bit against what they say. Knowledge dispels fear, doesn't it?
Correct.
And if you haven't given him the knowledge, and that's the number one parachute strategy, it's written on the hanger, isn't it? Knowledge dispels fear. Yeah. You've got to give that kid the knowledge.
Yeah.
Or else, like you say, if you do it for him, he's gonna dig in, isn't he? As much as he wants to go out the door.
100%. So it should have been that. Listen to me. Prepare for action. What do you do? Seatbelt off, lengthen off, discard to the sides. Good. Leg through the leg strap, beneath the leg strap retaining loop. Good. Carabiner off at the top. Keep going. Keep doing it. You know what you have to do. Do it. Doing those things would have triggered his mind into being present and staying with it. So it's all kinds of stuff like that I realised that, wow, there's a huge amount between athletes and soldiers. Now then, very uncharacteristically for me, I'm looking at my emails, and there's an intranet email from Army HQ about mental health and mental health training and what we're going to do. And I kind of actually emailed them back and said, well, this is what I've been doing. This is what I think. Here's my 10 pence. That I've struggled myself. Lots of the guys have struggled. And what I have found is that actually like key psychological skills are really important, but not hearing them from doctors or hearing them from nurses, but hearing them from like senior screws that actually hold that cadence. Who does the bloke respect? Yeah, exactly.
Do you know what I mean? Boffin with the glasses on.
Yeah.
Or, Corporal so-and-so who's done 3 tours of Herrick. All that, and I know exactly where you're coming from. Yeah.
And they went, that's a really good point. Shows what you've been doing. And so I said, this is this. And they went, we'd like to make you second in command of British Army mental resilience
What
training.
rank were you at this stage?
Full screw.
Really?
Which became part of the problem later on.
Yeah.
But I was a bucksy screw. And so, then my academic education started. So I then started, as I was learning this resilience package, doing a diploma, like a level 3 diploma in sports psychology, which is just like an introduction. I think that's like a GCSE level, but like a really interesting introduction to learning. And it just kind of went from there. And I saw in the Army mental resilience training team, my job was to then go from like camp to camp delivering this mental resilience training product, which was really great.
Yeah.
It was really interesting. And I found it really inspirational. One of the things that I found so inspiring, so interesting, was how one-dimensional I'd still perceived resilience to be. I perceived resilience to be Maroon Berets, 16 Air Assault Brigade, Parasmock down to your knees. You know where it was going. Yeah, exactly.
Alina saves lives.
All that stuff. Yeah. And then I was working with like really talented engineers, and even even the band. And I'm not in any way throwing shade at anyone in the band, but that's something outside of the realms that you would normally associate with resilience. But they were like incredibly emotionally resilient because there's a constant high performance expected of the band. The band get it wrong. Everybody sees that. So these musicians were like
in front of everybody, isn't it?
You know so like a much higher level of performance is expected of them all the time, and how they perform all the time is being looked at. So they were like really interested, like meeting all these different people, going to all these different camps, and these people coming to me and speaking to me while still doing all this education and this studying, while still doing my degree level effective coaching and mentoring, doing all this stuff and reading and all about everything from Maslow's hierarchy of needs to active listening and all that type of great stuff, just the real foundation basics of becoming what would eventually lead me into becoming a psychotherapist. But it was just really interesting, and I loved it. I genuinely loved teaching and speaking about mental resilience. And then like the people who then come and speak to you afterwards, guys saying, I want to go on selection. I say, listen, I didn't pass selection, but here's things that emotionally can help, and here's what you can do, and breaking the steps down and identifying yourself, what's your identity and how are you doing this. And then people saying things like really broken at home, and then just finding myself to being like this real like ambassador for like mental health. So and then speaking to people and giving them like leaflets and signposting them and introducing them to people and letting them know about things that they can do.
Yeah.
And it was like really genuinely gathering momentum. I wound up leaving, and I'm not. Lots of people get really caught up about when they leave, and it's not like a protest leave. I ultimately left because I got to a point in my career whereby there was no promotion ladder for me within the Army mental health team, and the real problem was that I was like 12, 13 years in at this point, and I was still a screw, and all of my friends had now picked up. And I said, what's happening? They said, we're going to extend you here for another 2 years. Does that come with promotion? And I went, unfortunately, it doesn't. We've only got one R4 fixed rank full screw PID, and that's yours. And I said, what happens then after those 2 years?
Yeah.
If you don't get it, will you stay for another 2 years? You're talking about making me a 17-year full screw. Yeah. And if I return to my regiment, I will 100%, because I absolutely should be, on the bottom of the pile of that promotional ladder, because I haven't been doing my job.
And you'll have a load of courses to do on top of that, wouldn't you?
Of course.
You haven't, you probably there'd have been some skill fade there with the basic stuff in that amount of time.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. So if there's no longevity for this, then I'll see you later. And
it's amazing that with the knowledge that you're obviously displaying to me here, and the passion that you have for the job, it's amazing that they'd let you go for the sake of sticking the stripe on your arm.
Well, the civil servant who ran it went, "You'll never leave the army. You need it too much."
Red Rag Bull.
Yeah.
See, watch this.
Yeah, exactly that. And I went and did the 7 clicks. And my first gig, like I did the 7 clicks, and then 3 days later, I'm delivering resilience and performance psychology to the Paralympic rowing team. Yeah. So I'm like, now
they're going to eat you up, aren't they?
Yeah.
Civvy Street's going to eat you up.
Yeah.
The skills that you've got and the way that you present yourself, it's just going to snowball for you, isn't it?
So then it went from there, and there, I've had some like really like wonderful, amazing gigs. I ran the resilience training for Police Scotland, so that was 23,000 police officers. That was like,
they must be laughing. There you go. Look at the army. Look what you lost.
Yeah,
that's what gets me, because it's like, how stupid are you?
Yeah, see you later.
And I don't like to bring negativity to the army, but that in particular is a poor display by the army. I'm going to tell you, what I mean. And I love the armed forces.
Same.
And I love what they do. But it does break me sometimes when I hear a story like that. They've genuinely lost a geezer here who. I think you should be a WO1 by now. Do you know what I mean? Delivering it to everybody, and you could be doing such a great job for them in a time when they need mental health more than anything else. Mm-hmm. They've lost someone with your ability. Yeah, well, thank you, but yeah, and I'm the same. Like I don't like to speak ill of the army. I don't like it when people speak ill of the army. It's an amazing platform that lifts young men up. Like I would never have had the opportunities that I've had in my life if it wasn't for the army. Like 100%, I'd have wound up as a total scumbag. And now I've got a job and work that I love. I have my daughter every day. I'm in a really loving relationship. I do loads of fizz. All of that is a direct reflection of my time in the military, which I adore the military for. Yeah, it was just that end was just so disappointing. Just a bit of a shame. A bit of a shame. That's all. Was. But so go on. Sorry. Please. What are you doing now? What are your plans now? What are you? So I now do 1 or 2 days. You've written a book, haven't you? I'm going to plug the book. Plug the book. Johnny, plug the book. Throw a screen up there, Johnny, all right? Run it under the buzz bar. Yeah, so I'm the head of psychotherapy for a clinic on Harley Street. So I work in the Harley Street Hospital in the Serena Clinic as the head of psychotherapy. Well, I mean, that's big potato, don't it? That's big potatoes. It's big potato, yeah. Yeah, it's good. It's interesting. Really interesting. But actually, I still have my private stuff where I do the one-on-one. So I have a lot of veterans in there. So I do a lot of stuff ad hoc, and I do a lot of stuff. I tell them, don't worry about it. Like, don't worry, I need to pay you. No, you don't. Don't worry about it. Like, it's fine. Because I actually find that type of psychotherapy and that kind of emotional support to be the most rewarding. So there was the giving stuff back. It's philanthropy type stuff, isn't it? It is, but it's like being with the boys again. It's like being back in. It's the right thing to do, isn't it? Yeah. Do you know what I mean? It's like being back in Hat Palace. Yeah. Like lads, like. But it's like working with these like great blokes who are just like, they're just such lovable rogues. Yeah. They make bad decisions. They make bad decisions. I always say that you're 2 decisions away from a nightmare. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? You something goes slightly wrong, you amplify it, boom, you're out of there. Do you know what? That's really interesting. So I did. I got to do some work with the CCRC, which is a Criminal Conviction Review Committee, talking about there's a completely unnecessarily high percentage of people in prison who are soldiers. Or ex-soldiers, I should say. I'm sorry, who are ex-military, and so what I talk about is sub-threshold related symptoms. So for an individual to get a diagnosis of post-traumatic stress disorder, there's the sort of 15 tick boxes they need to get. If they don't hit all 15 tick boxes, so you've got all 14, but you sleep well,
which is very unlikely, but you sleep well.
Yeah.
You've got 14 out of that 15. Therefore, you're not diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder. You're diagnosed with generalized anxiety disorder. Okay. And then how does that work in a court of law when that person who is having a stress response to the world that is related to their post-traumatic stress disorder, how does that then relate in a court of law as a mitigating factor? Oh, sorry that my client hit someone around the head with an ashtray. He's got anxiety. Well, actually, let's rephrase that as sorry that my client hit someone around the head with an ashtray. He's got sub-threshold related symptoms for post-traumatic stress disorder.
Yeah, the gravitas of both, and then so obviously, I've got reminded myself, so I do. I've been there. Do you know what I mean? So I know a bit about this.
Yeah. So it's so there's lots of these guys who are just struggling internally, emotionally, like to incredible levels. I did some work with Help Squaddy. I do regularly work with Project Recce, and like it's really interesting with the and Icarus Counselling, the amount of these guys who are holding on to just the most awful trauma that is still just projecting into their lives. If we can identify that, particularly we recruit from a low socioeconomic demographic, of which you're 5 times more likely to be exposed to a traumatic event as a child. Yeah. You join the military. This is just trauma compounding trauma. They then leave the military. Now, I made a point earlier on about identity. That identity's just been taken from you. Yeah. Which is a really difficult pill for guys to swallow. Like it's how it's managed by people is such varying degrees. So there's this huge rush of cortisol, this huge stress because I don't know who I am anymore. And as human beings, but particularly as men, there is a slight emphasis on men here. Men craving that purpose, and that identity, and that role within a tribe that's been stripped from them. I often say to people in the military, the most important thing you can do when you're thinking of leaving is finding out who you are outside of the uniform whilst you're still in the uniform.
I've always said this. I've always said that, your rehabilitation into Civvy Street starts on the day you join.
Yeah, I love that.
It starts on the day you join the army because if you don't integrate, if you don't know and you don't look outside, and let's face it, right, when you're in like places like Paradepot and that, civvies are civvies.
Yes, yeah.
And I don't have nothing to do with civvies because I'm military. Yeah. Right? And that's it. And that's almost bred into you.
Yeah, oh yeah.
To make you who you are, to give you that identity. But if you never look outside the wire, never look outside the fence and never understand, how can you integrate? Do you know what I mean? And I'll keep saying this to people. You've got to give people exposure, whether it be through sport, whether it be through introducing people. I'm trying to introduce people into boxing clubs now. Yeah. Taking good guys, taking them just so they get this civvy interaction. And moreover, have a bit of a respect when they come out, because otherwise there's nothing, is there?
I think community involvement is an unspoken superpower that the army has. Why have we got football referees? And the only time they ever do any football refereeing is inter-unit or like a potted sports afternoon. Like
potted sports.
Do you remember that? You have to hop 8 times and you can throw a beanbag into a bucket. Thanks, staff. Yeah, amazing. Yeah.
Oh dear. So no, you're right. So some of these people who when you look at the shower working the boards, they could be doing it for civvy clubs. Yeah. They could be doing it even if it was on a Sunday league type thing. Yeah. But they could be farmed out and they could be getting themselves into society and meeting civilians on the same level. Yeah. Because otherwise, you're always sort of like looking across, and you're not part of that, are you?
Yeah, and so they have this theory called earth-shattering theory, which is where something happens to you which makes you challenge and question every single aspect of your attitudes, behaviours and beliefs. And effectively, every single bloke who leaves the army has that moment where you go, it was just a big pantomime.
Yeah.
Like, it was cool, and like we did some amazing things, and there were some incredible acts of heroism and brilliance and bravery from some just people that I'll forever be in awe of. I've served with some amazing, amazing men. I'm not denying that. But the army as a whole, it's just a big act, really.
Mate, I got delivered that one, and I can tell you now, right, I got delivered that. I went to the job centre and looked for a crisis loan after I got out of the military. Yeah. Having been bearing them on D Squadron, Steely Harbinger of Death, Underwater Knife Fighter, all the rest of it. Okay? Yeah. I was offered one job to get my crisis loan, Lollipop Man in Margate, all right, and that was it. And that was a massive wake-up call to me because I go, wow. Yeah. That's insane.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And that's what you're on about there. That's what you're on about. All of a sudden, you've got...
Yeah.
That's what you are, mate.
Yeah. Yeah. And I left during COVID. I didn't even get
out. Oh, mate, yeah. What a great time to get out.
Didn't even... What a great time to be goaded by someone in Army HQ. Well, let's test him. But, that response for me, that was an ego response, to go and sign off like that. What I should have done is gone, that's a really inappropriate thing to say to someone who's spent over a decade of their life here. Yeah. I wanted to speak to someone, but I didn't. Instead, I just went, watch me then.
You airborne it.
That's it. Yeah, slam the door on my way out. Yeah, and so then we have this earth-shattering theory whereby we realise, and so lots of people really struggle with that because they've had so much of their identity tied to their regiment, their beret, their cap badge, whatever it might be, and they've had that, and then they're going, oh my God, like, who am I? So then you've got all of this stress, and then you've got childhood trauma, and then you've got potential trauma from service, which is potentially quite high, depending upon the period of time.
Horrendous for some people.
But horrendous, awful. And then so there's this build up of cortisol, and this stress hormone that has such a derogatory effect both on our physical and mental health. You know, cortisol damages the amygdala, so that's the bit that kind of is in charge of stress. So we have panic attacks. So you stressed people are more likely to get angry.
And all that sort
anxiety
of stuff,
damages the hippocampus.
It's interesting that you say they're more likely to get angry because that's, you know, you flash the bang time.
Yeah.
In times of stress.
Yeah.
Goes straight away, don't you? I mean, when I'm happy.
Yeah.
There is a snapping point, but when I'm sad, that snapping point, you're on it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. So there was a really brilliant study done, and it was done on rats, and it basically exposed rats to chronic stress for an extended period of time, and then cut them open and examined. It showed like such an inflamed adrenal gland, so lots of adrenaline, and then we could then identify actually how cortisol, which is a catabolic hormone, so it breaks down muscle tissue, had negatively affected their brain. And we can see that within humans. We see that within individuals who go through really traumatic childhoods. That neurogenesis and that neuroplasticity is greatly reduced because effectively cortisol damages the brain. It suppresses growth and it challenges that to effectively make us more emotional because our emotions are a sign for survival.
Yeah.
So you're basically becoming more survivally inclined rather than more logic and reasoning, less prefrontal cortex, more limbic system and subconscious emotional drives, because that's what's going to ensure survival. And we can identify that within children's brains. So now these deeply vulnerable children becoming soldiers and then leaving with no identity, no purpose, and all of a sudden the whole world becomes completely overwhelming for them.
Yeah. I think it's like dumping repeatedly over a period of years, opening a bottle of Coke, dumping a Mento in, and then just never letting it go, and then all of a sudden when you get out, you take the top off, and it's just whoop, it's gone, isn't it? Do you know what I mean?
And we often see negative displays of that trauma are often celebrated within the military because people who are like, oh, he's a hand grenade on a night out, and everyone's laughing about it. Now
I want to be that man.
Yeah. Now as like a psychotherapist, I'm like, yeah, that's a problem.
Yeah.
Like,
no, it is a problem.
Yeah. He drinks. Oh, what does he do? Oh, he'll just start smashing stuff, breaking stuff, he'll burst into tears. And this is being celebrated. Yeah, it's really funny. But don't get me wrong, like at the time in the regiment, I was, we've
all been there.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. I knew no better. It's always really helpful to remember that every individual you meet, every individual is doing the very best that they can with the information that they've got. And that's key, the information that they've got, because where do they get that information from?
Well, it goes back to what you were saying earlier about when you actually went to Bryce Norton or wherever it was, and you went, I'm the knobhead.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Because there's a sudden realisation.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting stuff because at the same time, these units, to operate in the way that they do, need a bit of that.
Correct.
They need that, or they can't do the jobs they've got to do.
Yeah, because you need that. So you need that hierarchy. You need people's instinctive drives to want to climb that hierarchy. You need these boys because they make fantastic soldiers. Yeah. I'm not in any way against the military system. My only 10 pence, my only problem with it is what happens at the last year.
Yeah, there needs to be a thought of how you integrate them.
Right.
And sort of like deliver them from one
Correct.
to another.
Yeah.
And I've always said that there should be a probation period when you leave the army whereby you can dip into both sides for, say, 2 years. Because if you did a 25 stretch in prison for murder, when you came out, you'd have a handrail. And you'd have a very long handrail. Yeah. And you would be able to do all sorts. You'd be able to, I don't feel safe. Do you know what I mean? You'd have someone you could talk to. When you leave the military, see you later.
Yeah.
What do you mean, see you later? Yeah, see you later.
Yeah. I love the idea of that. Because you could tie that to your reserve unit, your local reserve unit.
Exactly. So there's lots of stuff out there that require the skill sets that you've still got and that are in date. Cadets are always screaming out for decent adults. You could go there as a sort of like, as you can go there as a serving soldier, as an instructor. You could go there as a post leaver for the first 2 years that you've left. Reserve units, you could bolster their numbers. You could turn up at drill nights. You could put your uniform on and have a stroll about. Do you know what I mean? You're not getting the whole deal, but you're getting you're getting some sort of like Limpston runner thing whereby guys that have left can come back in and they can mentor what they call nods, their recruits through training.
I love that.
And that's a great thing.
Yeah, that's
Because
fantastic.
it puts them back in the loop, it puts them back in the depot. In the naffy break, they're talking to blokes that are still surfing. They still feel part of the thing, but they're building themselves into Civvy Street. And I think the probation thing for me is a no-brainer.
That's so validating for their experience as well, because it's effectively the Royal Marines' way of saying, you were great and you brought a lot to the party.
And now you can put something back.
Can you help us?
Yeah, exactly. You still feel like you're worth. The problem being when you get out and nobody respects what you've gone, when you go from D Squadron to being a lollipop man, nobody respects. You've lost everything. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? And by being shown that, actually, you are still a welcome and a valued member of this massive family that we put you in. However, do you know what I mean? You've still got your. So I don't know.
Which is what I did about 18 months of drill nights with 4-Para. So I was working in London, and they said we'd love to have you come over. You know, you're a PTI, you're a PJI, and they're mental health stuff. And I went there and they said, can you help us with the recruits? And started going away on weekends and doing stuff with the recruits. And I did a recruits weekend, one of their basic training weekends. And I did it in Purbright. And the section that I had was in the same room that I was in my basic training.
Yeah, I mean, all that stuff's great.
That's a dream, right?
All that stuff's great. Of course it is. And you're there doing it, in a different capacity. But now, the tables have turned. And I think it's very important that you try and put something back in at the end of, once you've sort of like steadied your own ship, you should really start trying to steady other people's and help out, don't you?
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
Well, but there is so much, and there's so much that I do with clients around that. So Pablo Picasso says, the meaning of life is to find your purpose, the meaning of life is to find your gift, but the purpose of life is to give that gift away. Yeah. And that's what the Royal Marines are doing at Lympstone. That's why that's such a fantastic idea.
They're getting a lot of stuff right down at the core at the moment. Do you know what I mean? Their
really
rebranding exercise, the fact that the way they promote themselves, and the way that they're dealing with mental health in particular, and the service leavers. I say this sort of like there's things that need to be considered. There's recruitment, there's retention, there's resettlement. And those three things need to be in line, or you can't get it right. Yeah, do you know what I mean? Because if one thing's out of sync, if your resettlement's rubbish, if your retention's rubbish, they're going to get out, and they're going to get out with a bad taste in their mouth. They're going to tell people that's going to affect your recruitment. Do you see what I mean? So if one thing's wrong with those 3 R's, the whole thing's shot. Yeah, it's a positive or indeed negative feedback loop. Exactly. Yeah, no, if you can get it all right, it's happy days all the way around, because the people that are coming out are encouraging people to join, who are having a great time, who are staying in, who are getting out happy. Boom, 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 the circle goes, doesn't it? One thing's wrong with that circle, you've had it. Yeah. You're in trouble. Yeah, no, that's really interesting. And they do get that absolutely right, and they are fantastic for that. And I'm big on this. I'm big on this on people and saying, a lot of clients and I talk about it, with the high end clients and say, you've got this money, but does this really make you happy? Don't get me wrong, money facilitates a lot of happiness, but money itself doesn't make you happy. And so you've got this money, you've got this wealth, you've got this fame, but actually, where is your true source of completion? Because making other people's lives, and this is from a Jim Carrey speech where he says, I wish people could see that the positive effect you can have on other people is the greatest currency that there is. Yeah. How is a world better because of your existence, and what are you doing? Never crave fame, crave use. I don't want to be famous. I want to be useful. Yeah. I want people to say, I've got a problem, call Jim. People have a problem, call Jim. I'm going for a breakup, call Jim. Yeah. Oh, this is up, call Jim. That's what I want in my community. That's what I care about. That's a role that I play in my community. Be it at the rugby club, or be it at I do a lot of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu club I'm at, where there's just these amazing characters from all different walks of life. It's like being back in the army. Yeah, fantastic. Boxing for me. Once I started boxing at the Peacock, there was people there who wanted the same sort of thing in life as me. They were fit, they were driven, they had purpose, they had goals in mind. When I talk to Mark Ormerod, he does the stuff with Reorg, doesn't he? The Jiu-Jitsu stuff. Fantastic, because it gives him purpose. So I wrote my dissertation for my master's on why combat sports with a lean on Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu should be considered a complementary psychotherapeutic practice for veterans. So I think you're 100% right. Yeah. 100% right. Yeah. It's so funny because, and I admire the academics greatly. I was at King's College. I admire them greatly, incredibly intelligent people. But that whole notion then was what? Why would a combat sport be good for veterans? And it's it's exactly, good kids come from the boxing clubs. Good kids come from judo clubs. Yeah. Martial arts isn't about you filling people in. It's about giving you discipline. It's about giving you regime. It's about giving you your own discipline. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? It is fighting is known as a discipline, isn't it? Do you know what I mean? I do no-gi, which is the just shorts and t-shirt. But when you see people in the gi because they're doing karate, judo, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, or whatever, how is that not considered a uniform? And that belt's a rank. Of course it is. Yeah.
Same it's the same in boxing.
It's an identity.
Yeah, correct. The same in boxing. You've got the different weight categories. You've got the different levels. It's a social hierarchy, and at the very top sits the CO, the boxing coach.
Yeah.
Who they all adore the boxing coach. The boxing coach almost takes on like the role of like a really trusted senior NCO.
He's a mentor, isn't he?
Yeah.
I mean, my coach in particular, Andre from the Peacock. I look at him like a father figure.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? He's had that much of an impact on my life, and I met him when I was 45 years old. Do you know what I mean? So I'm like, wow.
Yeah, but that is bang on it. So a lot of veterans who leave, and I say, well, actually, how are you spending time with your fellow man? Because men are terrible for social isolation, and we can actually identify that social isolation is one of the worst things that we have for mental health. Yeah. Like one of the worst things. There are two things that really degrade the brain. First and foremostly is inactivity. You only need to do about 4,000 steps a day once you're over the age of 60 to grossly extend your life expectancy. The clinic that I work at is part of the European Society for Preventative Medicines. So like I get like firsthand into this research stuff and like anti-aging and mental health. It's really fascinating. But also isolation is horrendous. So there's a massive study in America because they spend more money, and I know that's a slightly warped statistic because of how their healthcare system works, but they spend more money per person on health than anywhere else in the world. And what they have identified is that people are dying younger. So their life expectancy has started to drop, which is the opposite of what you would expect for people spending that amount of money. What is this research? Why are people dying younger than they should be? What is going on? And they couldn't really find any correlation until they decided they're going to recategorize certain deaths. So they recategorized eating yourself to death, smoking yourself to death, taking drugs to your death, suicide, risk-taking behaviors. They recategorize those as deaths of despair. Because what's the actual difference? If you say to someone, if you carry on drinking the way that you're going to drink, that you are going to die. And then someone who has a tragic night and takes their own life, like actually there's not a huge amount of psychological difference between those two things. That's people who have just given up on life and given up on themselves. And when we identify actually why is that, what is going on with those deaths of despair, like 80% of them all had the same thing in common. They were chronically lonely.
Yeah, no, that's a terrible thing as well. Loneliness, the word loneliness.
It's a disease.
Me, that just upsets me.
People become so socially isolated and they leave the military, and less than 5% of the UK population have ever had anything whatsoever to do with the military. So you saying I was B Squadron.
D Squadron.
D, sorry. I'm getting stabbed later on, everybody. Tell my daughter I love her. Sorry, mate. Yeah, D Squadron. And you're telling people that, and they just go, shrug their shoulders.
It means nothing. It means nothing.
Yeah.
I was a paratrooper or whatever. Yeah, whatever. Anyway, Lollipop Man was what you going for.
Yeah. But yeah. So then there's that chronic. So I'm desperately trying to encourage guys to get involved in these combat institutions. Like whatever floats your boat. You want to box, go and box. You want to go and do karate and do like extreme levels of discipline for karate. Go and do that. You want to roll around with your mates on the floor and strangle each other. Cool. Come and do some jiu-jitsu. Yeah. Like come and do that. And because that is re-engaging you into society, into a hierarchical structure with positive feelings, with engagement, with allowing you to develop relationships, meaning and achievement.
You need to achieve stuff. You've got to achieve. I have to achieve in life. If I'm not achieving, I deteriorate so quickly. I do. If I've got no purpose. Yeah. You know, if there's no purpose, the charity boxing I do, I'm going to fight. I don't really worry if I lose. I just don't want to look stupid. So I'm going to train, aren't I? Yeah. So I don't know. Yeah.
But that is exactly it, mate. But that is bang on. That having that sense of purpose and identity within a social hierarchy is so important, and that's why we talk about developing that identity outside of the uniform whilst you're still in it. It's cool. It's awesome what you've done. Amazing. But as you near in the twilight of your career, who are you outside of that? Because someone's going to ask you that question.
Some of the stuff that we've raised here for me is stuff that I'm sure the military must be looking at. But it just don't seem to be sinking in some quarters, you know what I mean? I don't know. It's almost like I want to take this podcast and I want to go, right, you need to watch that. Yeah. You need to watch that. Because some of the stuff you're saying is absolutely phenomenally spot on. Yeah.
But that's come from my lived experience. So,
but that's some of the the University of Life, and I hate that. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. But that literally is. Yeah. It's coming from what you've done in your life.
Yeah. So
as opposed to, it's not out of a book. It's not.
Yeah. It's why I moved back to Colchester. Yeah. So I left and I was in a relationship with a girl, and she lived near Birmingham. 10 out of 10 would not recommend. And there we were, and there was like this bodybuilding gym that was just full of like these like really intense bodybuilders. The rugby club like was not fit for purpose, And I just remember being so lonely. And then I came back to Colchester to play in a rugby tournament. So every year we have a commemorative rugby tournament for one of the guys who really tragically died. And I'm running around this rugby tournament with my mates from Colchester Rugby Club. And the brigade's got a team in there, and someone from the brigade team got red carded within 30 seconds of a match because he punched someone. You know, all the good stuff. And I'm like, this is where I should be.
Yeah.
And then I go and see my daughter, because my daughter lives in Colchester with her mum, and I go, what am I doing in Birmingham? So relationship comes to an end, move back to Colchester, and now I'm surrounded by my friends. But there was this really dark and difficult moment, because I'm studying my Master of Science in War Psychiatry at King's, so I'm still at uni and I'm behind on uni work. I'm trying to run a business and I'm trying to get clients, and I'm feeling horrendous in myself because the relationship's come to an end. I'm staying in a mate's spare room, and she was great, but she gave me a spare room. So I'm in a spare room, I've got boxes filling up my car, I'm in a spare room, I'm in my 30s, I've got no relationship, no prospects, I'm struggling my way through uni, I'm overwhelmed with work. And then someone just knocks on your door and goes, hey mate, I heard you were back, do you want to go for a brew? You'll go for a run around, go and play some rugby.
Yeah.
And then, the flat that I live in town now, I have guys knock on me we're 8 years old, can Jim come out and play? Guys from the regiment still turn up and knock on my door, and guys who I've served with, or can we go play? And now I've got all the jiu-jitsu stuff, and it just occurs to me that resilience is fantastic, and focusing on the individual is absolutely fantastic and brilliant. But we are all stronger together.
Yeah, of course you are.
One leaf, one tree, many leaves, one tree. We're all part of this. We're all in this together.
Yeah, 100% right.
Yeah, and we're all linked. We're all linked. Someone said to you, go and speak to Jim. And people who I know because I've met them, and through this great community and this network of incredible veterans who are doing amazing things, we're all interconnected, and yet people isolate themselves increasingly. And that's a disease.
Yeah, no, that's a poor thing. Listen, I could talk to you for hours, mate, and I'm hoping that you'll do some more stuff with us here.
Definitely.
We've come to a bit of an end on this today, but listen, mate, I'd love to have you on again. Yeah. I'd love to keep tabs with what you're doing, especially on the mental health life, and we'd love to help promote you as an individual, because I think you're doing some fantastic stuff. I really do, genuinely.
Thanks, mate. Thank you.
All right, look, thanks for coming. Cheers. We'll have a brew. Let's go have a brew.
Right. Cheers, buddy. Thank you so much.